Welcome back, episode 20 of the Splat Sports Podcast. The boys are all here. We are going to start posting more frequently. We have a lot more times on our hand in the sports world. There's a lot more to talk about. We also want to get our clips out so that they're recent. As some of you know, our clips are usually behind by an estimated time of 2 to 3 weeks. So we would like to get our clips out just a bit earlier. But here we are. Sports are back into play, and let's jump into the MLB. G-Russ, he's had a rough week, especially in the world of baseball. He's had to fight off some baseball fans. And then Ronald Acuna tears his ACL. G-Russ?
Yeah, it's been a rough week so far this week. Second torn ACL for Acuna in a 3-year span. It's his other ACL, which in a sense it's better than his right because when he's batting, he puts all the weight on it before he steps. So, but looking at statistics that I saw, torn ACLs for people, it should only affect Acuna's base running more than anything. I believe you retain 80 or 90% of what you had looking at other players who tore their ACL, looking at their stats. They're not going to be good as they have been, but they are pretty close to it. So that is a good thing. But the Braves overall as a whole, they do have decent depth. They have Duvall. They traded for Jared Kelenic in the offseason. And they also have former Rookie of the Year Michael Harris. But yeah, overall, Braves are struggling a little bit batting-wise. Pitching has been great. Max Fried has finally came along, gave up 1 run in 8 yesterday. He's pitched 2 complete games so far. And yeah, they're currently back of the Phillies. I think it's around 6 games. Phillies, of course, only played 1 or 2 teams over 500 so far. So that's why their record is so good. Maybe they can keep it up. I don't know. But I do think it will be good for the Braves if they do get a wild card, give them something to prove, maybe, throw that Philly luck back on them, that they beat us 2 straight years being in the wild card. So if we can get past them and play them, that'd be very nice to do. So I don't expect the Braves to sell or anything, even I don't think they'll get below the wild card or anything. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bumpy ride this year, but I think they can get to the playoffs and maybe make some noise.
Saw a lot of people comparing Acuna to Eric Davis, who he was electric individual, had a lot of ACL. He was injury prone. I don't think Acuna's injury prone yet. I think that if he misses another complete season, then yeah, he goes on the injury prone guy. This does hurt him. I don't think he'll come back as necessarily the same player like we saw last year. I definitely think that he'll be still a very viable option. I still think that he will, but I just don't think it's hard to come back from 2 ACL tears. It's very tough to do that. But also, what G-Russ was struggling with this week was fighting off the Paul Skeens fans. G-Russ famously said that Paul Skeens was called up too early to the MLB. Barrett, do you think – well, let's get Barrett's opinion on this one. Barrett, do you think Paul Skeens was called up a little too early here?
No, I mean, he's looked pretty good to me so far. He's been throwing, about 6 or 7 innings every time he goes out and pitches. Pretty much holding the except for his first start, pretty much holding the other team to, a couple of runs, which has been pretty good. His ERA, his WHIP have all looked great. So I think it's been a good call for the Pirates so far.
Now, Grant, defend yourself here.
Okay, so first thing I want to say is I'm not a Paul Skeens hater. I just thought it was too early for him to be called up. Looking at some of the stuff people said, my facts weren't straight. He went 6 innings, 80 pitches in his final start. Overall, 7 games, 27 innings pitched, I think. So roughly 3.5 per. So, I mean, I guess if you looked at the final game, I was wrong about that. But overall, he didn't pitch a ton. And another thing that I was concerned with was that it is hard to be an ace or a great pitcher in the MLB in this time, considering the balls are a little bit more juiced. 2019, they did the juice ball year. I think they died him down a little bit more, but it's still a very hitter-friendly league. I do think that, with every pitcher, there's going to be a time when they're going to struggle a little bit. I could see that happening to Skeens in a few weeks. It may not. It may be next year before people try to figure out, how to approach him. But yeah, so far he's had a great job. 6 innings, 2 earned, I believe, today. So that's really good for him. Even though they lost 8-0, he doesn't have much help on the Pirates. So, yeah, I want him to succeed. I know it didn't seem like that in that reel overall, but I do hope he succeeds and he can get the Pirates back to being a contender.
Juris was fighting some monsters on the Instagram side, but we also can – the trade deadline, it's still a little bit far away, but teams are always looking. Baseball, they say it's a marathon, not a sprint. Teams are going to be looking for pieces to pick up. Trade deadline is approaching, not very soon, but I thought, what team should sell? And my team is the New York Mets. We saw it with Jorge Lopez today. He threw his glove above the net and basically in his conference said, I play for the worst effing team in the league. I would agree to a degree just because I hate the Mets. But the Mets do need to sell. You have Pete Alonso. His contract year is this year. Francisco Lindor has gotten worse statistically. No, I wouldn't say worse statistically. Let me get my facts straight. I'm not going to get called out on Instagram like G-Russ is. But he has not gotten better. We'll say that. Struggled mightily. Edwin Diaz, injury prone. He's still there. I think the Mets will keep him. But the Mets do need to blow this roster up. It's not good. We all know it. They have pieces. They should be a much better team than what they are, and they're not. Flat out struggle. So, yeah, I think that the Mets should blow up their roster. I think that they'll trade Pete Alonso at the deadline this year. That would probably be one player. I don't know where he would go. I think the D-backs would be a fun team for Pete Alonso to go to. I think it'd be interesting. You have Christian Walker there, though, but I think it'd be fun. Barrett, what team do you think should blow it up at the deadline?
The team I think needs to potentially look to, send the bomb and blow it up this deadline is the Boston Red Sox. They've been pretty underperforming this year, and they've always historically been pretty good. And they do have some nice, kind of a little bit older pieces, kind of veterans, but still high quality players in the MLB. One that sticks out to me is Kenley Jansen, former Dodgers closer, kind of bounced around the league. He's a pretty solid relief pitcher and can really be a help to a team that's looking to help bolster their bullpen in the back half of the year. And they've got some other Chris Martin, I think, is another relief pitcher who's a little bit up there in age, but also a pretty good reliever as well. So I think Red Sox should look to move on from maybe those older players, not necessarily blow the roster up. I think they've got some decent, younger players, but look to move some of those older, aging players to help out a team who's maybe one or two pieces away from making a playoff push.
Yeah, I think the Red Sox, they're older. You have Trevor Story there. He's still, I wouldn't say young, but he's still very much viable. He's on a good contract too. I could see Trevor Story getting traded. G-Russ, your team?
I'm gonna go with the St. Louis Cardinals. They're currently third in the NL though, so obviously way better than last year. But they got some old guys too, like Barrett said with the Red Sox. I believe they're one of the oldest teams in the league. They obviously have Arenado. They obviously have Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt was rumored to be going somewhere last year, possibly. Didn't happen though. But I just don't see the Cardinals really getting to the playoffs this year. They don't got a lot of young talent, so trading a veteran away like Goldschmidt or Arenado would be very good. I could see them going to the two teams that made the World Series last year. They're both struggling, both a couple games under 500 with the D-backs and the Rangers. So having a veteran presence there, someone who's been there before for the most part, like Goldschmidt, Arenado has a little bit, not a ton. I do think that the Cardinals will sell at the deadline, unlike last year. I feel like this was kind of like, last hurrah in a sense to get those two guys to a World Series possibly. So I do think the Cardinals will sell at the deadline.
Yeah, I think those contracts are huge though. And it's tough in the MLB to trade a big contract like that, especially for a guy who's in his mid-30s like Paul Goldschmidt. He can still hit, but he's up there in age. I can see them trading for pitching because they have the oldest rotation. It's literally a retirement home as the rotation. But yeah, that's been baseball. Dang, we talked about baseball for 10 minutes. NCAA men's basketball. Mark Sears announced that he's returning to Bama. We also see a lot of other players coming back. Bronny's staying in the draft. But Mark Sears, a guy that a lot of people kind of said, hey, this dude could go to the NBA. Probably wouldn't be a very high pick, but would be a viable option in the NBA. But Barrett, your thoughts on Mark Sears returning?
Yeah, this is huge for Bama. They get their best player back on already Final Four team last year, and then you go ahead and add in that great transfer class they had. They didn't lose too many pieces. I think Nate Oates is going to have his best team that he's had down in Tuscaloosa this year. They're going to be a really good ball club. They bring in, Cliff Amorier from Rutgers, who's a really nice rim protector and lob threat to go alongside with Grant Nelson. Obviously, Sears can fill it up. They get Aiden Holloway from Auburn, Chris Youngblood from USF, who can really score the ball as well. They just got a really good team. Jaron Stevenson, also, who's a forward for them, also announced today he's coming back, so that's going to be a huge piece for them. I've heard they're going to be the number one ranked team in the first, AP poll coming out this year, and I think they deserve it. They bring pretty much a Final Four team back and made it even better. So I think Alabama's going to be really good this year, and I think Sears will be a catalyst for one of the best players in the college basketball this year.
SEC heating up, especially in the basketball department. Chaz Lanier, of course, we talked about it last episode at Tennessee. Tennessee's looking good. Auburn looking good as always. Kiros, you got anything?
Yeah, this is pretty big for Alabama. I feel like the past few years have shown though you are successful the year prior, and people start building you up. At teams like North Carolina a couple years ago were almost unanimous AP number one, missed the tournament. I'm not going to say that Bama's going to do that. I think they will. I think they'll easily be a top 10, top 50 team in the nation. I do think they still have to figure out some stuff like their defense, one of the worst in the NCAA last year. They lost their starting small forward to Kansas, but they did gain, like Barrett said, Aiden Holloway, the guy from USF, among others. But I do think they'll be very good this year. I just think that's best to slow down the brakes. Is that me being just a diehard Tennessee fan and me hating Bama? A little bit probably. But overall, they will be good. I just think it's best to pump the brakes a little bit now. I do think they should be an AP top 5 team to start the year. I do think one is a little bit of a reach, though.
There you go. NCAA football. I saw this earlier today. The NCAA is talking about possibly shortening rosters. I think it's down to like 85 players possibly. And possibly the elimination of walk-ons. Now, I don't know if that's what would happen, but it is being considered that walk-ons would be eliminated, which I think, honestly, probably not a good idea. Walk-ons are usually what you would call your glue guys, and I think they present opportunities for guys that are overlooked a lot of the times. But what made it interesting to me was Texas A&M coach Mike Elko. I think it's Mike Elko. I'm going to go with that. Anyway, yep, I was right. I know the names. Anyway, Texas A&M, the 12th man. It's a walk-on. They have a lot. They respect their walk-ons down there, not like most programs in America. But he said, you know what? I'm fine with it. I'm fine with shortening rosters, losing walk-on spots. I think as a Texas A&M coach, not a good look for you there, buddy. When your entire program, the 12th man, is a walk-on. Not the best idea to say that, especially in Texas A&M. Now you're going to have to play Texas, Oklahoma in the SEC. Texas A&M lost a lot. Probably not going to be a good first year at Texas A&M for Mike Elko. But shortening rosters does mean scholarships, things like that. I see why the NCAA is kind of doing it. If you shorten the rosters, it means that the talent distribution is going to even out, really, because you can't keep all these good players like Bama, USC, Georgia, Michigan. They have a lot. They're very deep, and they have a lot of 4 or 5-star players that are their third strings. This would not eliminate it, but really tone that down, and it would distribute the rosters evenly. So I think, especially how we talked about last episode with the NIL going on with all that, I think that this would be a very beneficial thing. I don't think 85 players. I think that number's a little too low. I think probably around 95 would probably be the best number there. But yeah, there you go. NFL, not a lot going on, but Nico Collins signed a big extension. I think it was 3 years, $82 million, somewhere in that range. It's in the 80 million. 72, sorry about that. $72 million. He was a solid weapon for C.J. Stroud. I think it's a little interesting, though, Nico Collins being your number one guy. I mean, they're paying him like he's a number one guy, really, if you look at it. I feel like they could possibly get another guy that would be much better. I mean, you have Stephon Diggs out there, who should be the number one guy, but if Texas is rolling with Nico Collins, who had a great year, I guess we roll with it. Barrett, you got anything on this one?
Yeah, it's a little surprising to me, especially with the recent acquisition of Stephon Diggs. You got to wonder, maybe how Diggs is personally feeling about that. How he's going to respond to that potentially if it kind of, maybe messes him up in the head, or if he kind of uses it as motivation to perform really well this season. So I think that could be something to potentially look into. But I'm happy for Nico Collins. He had a good year last year. Seems like a pretty likable guy in the NFL. So good job, Nico, for getting that nice extension.
Could definitely be interesting coming down the stretch, especially that contract. Money's a big thing in the NFL. It's going to be kind of interesting how they play with that contract. But yeah, there we go. What's next? The NBA. We got a lot to talk about in this one because the playoffs are happening. The Boston Celtics swept the Pacers. G-Russ is very opinionated on how bad the Celtics team is, apparently. So I don't know what his thoughts are on about that. I think that the Celtics are perfectly fine. I think that they're going to win an NBA Finals championship. But no Tyrese Halliburton for Game 4. Wore an interesting fit on the sideline. Wore a sweater vest. Very interesting. I thought that usually for Game 4 of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals, probably shouldn't wear that. Jaylen Brown named the Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals Most Valuable Player. Pretty good. I mean, the Celtics looked good. Al Horford played great. T.J. McConnell had played phenomenal this series. I don't know where T.J. McConnell decided to – I don't know what happened, but he started balling out. Jaylen Brown did punch him in the face. I will admit it. Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. Barrett, kind of your thoughts on what the Pacers should do next after this. I mean, they had a great year. You have pieces. Pascal Siakam, he's still there. Miles Turner, you get Tyrese Halliburton back. What do you think this Pacers team kind of needs to look towards?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had a great year this year, and they've got some really nice young pieces, like you said. I mean, Halliburton's kind of on the verge, in my opinion, of becoming kind of an NBA star. Had a great season this year. Obviously, they've got one of the better front courts in the NBA with Siakam and Turner. So I think maybe, they need to look to add – obviously, they have Benedict Mathurin, who didn't play all throughout the playoffs. He's a really interesting young player. But I think they need to potentially look to add just a little bit more depth and then get some – maybe a little bit better on the wing side, help Halliburton out in that backcourt a little bit. Obviously, T.J. McConnell had a great series, like Hunter mentioned, so maybe you play that, factor into that. I wouldn't bet too much money on that happening again, though. But I think they just need to improve their wing depth a little bit, and I think they'll be in a nice spot to hopefully get back this time next year.
I think a guy like Chris Paul can maybe be an interesting kind of addition there in Indiana. Good passer. I think that's what they really need. I mean, you need a guy who can dish the ball out. I know G-Russ does not agree with me but G-Russ, you're hating on the Celtics. Said that that we should be concerned because we barely won every single game. G-Russ, your thought? G-Russ, explain yourself here, buddy.
Yeah, the Pacers, if they were probably healthy Game 3 and 4, they probably would have won. They could have easily be up 3-1 right now. Celtics had to come back 3 of the games in order to win, and they were both within the final 2 minutes of the game going on good runs, which is really good for the Celtics in a sense that they'll have confidence that they could possibly do that in the finals. But I'm just the Knicks kind of played that play style. There was a couple games against the Sixers. They came back in the final minute. That was where that ultimately got them, even though they were playing a team like the Pacers who scored a lot and scored a bunch. And so overall, if it was way too much, then they couldn't come back. But just playing the style where it's like, you think you can come back every game almost within a few minutes if you have it. I don't like that play style. Their offense is really stagnant, it looks like to me right now. Tatum played good this series, but prior series he was struggling a bit. I believe first series he's shooting like 21% from three or something atrocious for a superstar like himself. So I am nervous about the Celtics. I do think though if they do play the Mavs finish business against the T-Wolves, Celtics will beat the Mavs in the finals, but the T-Wolves do somehow come back. I think their length could affect them, and I think the T-Wolves would beat the Celtics in a series. So Celtics, I think will probably win the finals, assuming the Wolves don't, unless the Timberwolves do something historic, which has never happened before. But yeah, I think the Celtics will win, unfortunately. Yeah.
You also have to mention that Kristaps Porzingis did not play a single game. He was a big contributor for him throughout the regular season, so could be seeing him come back in the finals. But onto the Western Conference Finals, like you, Russ, mentioned, the Mavericks, they went up 3-0 on the T-Wolves. I kind of said they were going to get swept. They did not. T-Wolves did win. Anthony Edwards played a heck of a game along with Karl Anthony Towns. Charles Barkley hates on Karl Anthony Towns. Dude played pretty good, not going to lie. But they are down 3. I mean, it's 3-1. They went down 3-0. No team's ever come back from that. I think it's going to be interesting. This next game's in Dallas, right?
No, heads back.
No, goes back.
It's in Minnesota. Could be interesting. I do think that the Mavericks, I think that they'll take it to a Game 7. But I think that the Mavericks will win it in a Game 7. Barrett, your thoughts on this kind of matchup series or whatever?
Yeah. Obviously, I don't think really anyone expected Minnesota to get down 3-0. At least I personally didn't. Yeah, this has really been an interesting series to watch kind of Luka and Kyrie really kind of catch fire in a sense in this series. I feel like every time there was a clutch bucket that needed to be made, one of the two came up with it. So I think the Timberwolves have kind of had to weather the storm of that, and they're kind of getting back in the groove now. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns has had a terrible series except for this Game 4. And when he played good, the Timberwolves looked pretty good in my opinion. Anthony Edwards is looking to be a little bit more aggressive now. And their defense looked a lot better in Game 4. So I think it's a good sign for Timberwolves fans. And I think, there might be a shot that they, can potentially win this series because they're a really motivated group from what I've seen. They all kind of say things in the locker room that makes you believe that they're not out of this. So I think the Timberwolves are really going to make this series interesting going forward.
Very much can. Mavericks, Luka, Kyrie, they played great. I think that if one of them were to get injured or if one of them were to, I guess, have an off game, I think that this would severely hurt the Mavericks, honestly. That team is literally Luka and Kyrie, if you look at it. P.J. Washington, yes, he sometimes contributes. Derek Lively also contributes sometimes. But, I mean, this is why I have so much confidence in the Celtics. The Celtics have 5 guys that can all play a fantastic game. Drew Holiday can go off. Derek White can go off. Al Horford can go off. Tatum can go off. Jaylen Brown can go off. With the Mavericks, you don't see that. You just have Kyrie. You just have Luka. Now, when they go off, yeah, they can drop 70 points on your head with ease, which I think that's an interesting kind of thing to do. But, Jiris, what do the Mavericks need to do to close out this series?
Exactly what you said for the most part. They need Luka and Kyrie to play well. They need a third guy to maybe put up 20 close to it. That'll most likely be P.J. Washington. Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford need to continue to play well, be great rim protectors like they have so far. and just overall let Luka and Kyrie do their thing. Let them close it out. The Timberwolves have had usually one of their best players struggle so far, and if that happens, and Luka and Kyrie are having a good night and they're having their guy put up 15 to 20, I think the Mavs will easily win the series.
So there you go. That's the NBA playoffs. We do have one more NBA topic. I kind of thought about it. I was watching Russell Westbrook mixtape highlights on TikTok, and I kind of said, you know what? Is Russell Westbrook a first ballot Hall of Famer? Because in my opinion, I think he is, just because he has the triple-double record, a record that no one thought that would be broken. He also was very good in Oklahoma. I think that these last couple of years, though, have not helped him, have not helped his case necessarily. I mean, his Washington days, he played all right. The Houston days didn't play very well. Lakers days, we shouldn't even talk about. The Clippers, he has shown up and played decent as kind of like that backup point guard for them. But do you think Russell Westbrook is a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yes, I definitely think he should. Me and Hunter were talking about before we were filming. He probably put up arguably the best offensive statistic season ever, averaging a triple double. Him and the Big O, Oscar Robertson, are the only two to ever do that. But overall, throughout his career, it's mainly been him. He had KD some. KD abandoned him after that. He did have that incredible year, but I feel like these later years, it's just been hard for him to find his role. He could have a really good role, averaging 10 to 12, getting other people the ball, not focusing on himself scoring, just moving it, getting in there, rebounding, playing solid defense. And I feel like he finally found that in LA, and I think that him finding that will allow him to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Do you think Russell Westbrook is a first ballot Hall of Famer?
I do, yeah. Like Grant said, I mean, he has a triple double record. I mean, that's something you don't come across ever, really. He just kind of single handedly, I feel like, was the backbone of Oklahoma City Thunders. From my elementary school and early middle school days, everyone remembers Russell Westbrook kind of being one of the most dominant players in the league, always in the hunt for the MVP. And he just kind of single handedly willed that Thunders team to the playoffs, in my opinion, multiple years. Always kind of came up with big shots, clutch moments. Always seemed to be Russ. Obviously we know what happens kind of in these more recent years where he's kind of bounced around the league trying to find his role, like Grant mentioned. But I think just his Oklahoma City days really kind of, in my opinion, solidify him as a first ballot Hall of Famer, because he was very influential in the NBA and was just all around great player.
There you go. Russell Westbrook, when he retires, which probably not going to be soon, I would assume. First ballot Hall of Famer, according to the Splat Sports people, us. So there you go. That's been episode 20. Always March. Episode 2's out. I think episode 3, which would be the final, I believe, right?
It'll be out Saturday.
Will be out Saturday. Episode 19 of the Splat Sports Podcast. It's already out. Duh. This episode, I don't know when it's going to be out. Probably Sunday.
Probably
maybe
around Saturday or Sunday, yeah.
Okay. So there we go. That's been episode 20. Jesus loves you. Yeah.